Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, into another YouTube live show tonight. I am John Kurtz. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining me on a glorious Sunday night to talk about the greatest sport on planet Earth, college football, and everything that surrounds it. Today, I'm going to talk about what's coming up this week because we survived SEC Media Days week. We survived all of that, all right? And congratulations to you and yours on making it through. It's a very difficult time for everybody. It can be quite nauseating, but we are here. And relatively, I would say, unscathed. It was not too bad as far as the overindulgence, getting too high on one's supply, as I saw from somebody out there on Twitter. There wasn't as much of that as I thought there might be from SEC country. There were some comments from Greg Sankey, and that is a part of what we are going to talk about here today, his relationship with Tony Petiti of the Big Ten, and specifically, what the hell is Tony Petiti going to say now? We never hear this guy talk. In fact, he's finally started to take some criticism over the last, I'll say last 2 or 3 months for the fact that he just has not talked throughout this college football playoff format debate when the Big Ten has really been the league that has been upset. They're the ones that have been pushing the 4-4-2-2. Even when it was assumed the SEC would go along with that, like that was the Big Ten pushing that. And for everything that Petiti is trying to do behind the scenes, he's kind of left Greg Sankey out there to just take most of the bullets if you're going to force me to defend Greg Sankey here. So what will the tone be of Tony Petiti when he has to go out and speak this week at Big Ten Media Days out in Vegas? It'll be very, very interesting to see how that goes and how that relates to the relationship between Sankey and Petiti, which, hey, you might have guessed it, greatly affects what's going to happen to the rest of the college football world. The Big Ten and the SEC control so much, particularly when it comes to the playoff right now, that if you're a Big 12 fan, if you're an ACC fan, you're going to want to be watching closely to what happens with Petiti and what he has to say, with Sankey now having spoken his piece, so to speak, at SEC Media Days, and Brett Yormark kicking things off a couple of weeks ago in Frisco at Big 12 Media Days. So Jim Phillips is out there too. I'd imagine at ACC Media Days, you're going to see pretty similar statements from him to what Brett Yormark had to say. But anyway, that's the lead of the show here tonight. But we've also got Big 12 players picking a Big 12 champion, and it is much different poll that I was able to get from Big 12 players anonymously than what the media picked in the unofficial poll, than what the coaches picked in Brett McMurphy's poll from On3, and even what you, the fans, picked, because I gave you guys a fan poll as well. So what does it mean? Why do the players not believe in the team that everybody else is picking? I've got Big 12 Stadium tier list coming at you today. That was a very popular video last year. I'm now armed with new data and new quotes from Big 12 players, because that was something I talked to them about at Big 12 Media Days, was exactly that. What's the toughest place to play in the Big 12? And man, did we get some good quotes. So I will give you the tier rankings that are sure to make nobody upset. Not a single soul, I'm sure, will be upset by those. Continue to sprinkle in your hottest Big 12 takes, just like last time. I enjoyed that. So those of you that have them, if you got something hot, let me know in the chat. You can also, if you want to guarantee that yours makes it on tonight, you can submit a super chat by clicking the $sign below the chat box in order to do that. But even if you're just regularly sprinkling them throughout the chat, we'll see what happens tonight. We shall see. Please do like the video. Please do subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everybody who does that. It is totally free. Great way to support. Make sure you are subscribed to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter if you want access to the Big 12 Anonymous Player Survey, which continues next week. I've still got more and more to come. Only dropped a couple pieces of that last week. So make sure you get signed up at Open for Business, ofbnews.com, in order to do that. If you're not watching live, you still want to be a part of the show, you still want to send me a question or comment or just support, you can do so on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4. Drop me a question or comment with your donation, and I will kick off the next show with it, which is what I'm going to do right now, because I've got a couple. We'll start with my guy, Brian. Brian, thank you for your support of the channel. Brian says, hey, John, wishing you the best. Hot take. All right, so this is a hot take from Brian. He's starting us off. Everybody, watch and see how it's done. says Jake, and he's referencing Jake Retzloff. Jake only had 4 starts coming into last year. With better defensive players, a backloaded schedule, and a better bus driver QB, BYU gets 10 wins again. All right, Brian's predicting a 10-win season again for BYU, even without Jake Retzloff. He also says, question, with an SEC Big Ten tie in the college football playoff vote, does the Big 12 have a tiebreaker? No, unfortunately, in the college football playoff debate here, if there's a tie between the SEC and the Big Ten, it will just stay at what it is right now. You just won't get the actual expansion. I think a lot of that is probably because, and this kind of goes into something I was going to talk about in a moment, but for the SEC, you're pretty content just to keep it here right now. The Big Ten has been driving the bus more on expansion because they have a bigger conference, more teams. Wanting a bigger playoff is something that makes a little bit more sense for them, theoretically. They have been a little bit more motivated to do that, whereas the SEC right now, I think, still feels like it's in pole position and the best position of power of anybody. So, yeah, unfortunately, don't think it is going to work out like that. But, however, the caveat to that is if it just stays the way it is right now and you don't have expansion and you don't get to 4-4-2-2, it's like I said on the last show, that's kind of best case scenario for the Big 12 because you don't have to compromise on signing on the dotted line that you're half the conference of the Big Ten of the SEC, while at the same time, you don't have to add a bunch of extra at-large bids in a 5+11 that are most likely all going to be taken up by Big Ten and SEC schools, so you don't fall as far behind. So that's what I would say to you, Brian. Now, 10 wins for BYU, definitely a hot take. Definitely a hot take. 10 wins for BYU. Did I say TCU? 10 wins for BYU is a hot take. I right now, I don't really know what to think of BYU, to be completely honest, but I do think with a new quarterback, even though I have said it feels like there's more upside at the quarterback position without Retzloff, there's also a way lower floor. So I still think by nature of that, it is a hot take. But this is exactly how you do it, Brian. This is a great example of a hot take that is definitely hot. That is not just hey, I think Arizona State will be very good this year. Doesn't qualify as a hot take. That's a hot take, Brian. I appreciate it. Appreciate your support of your squad and appreciate your support of the channel. Thank you, my friend. Let's talk to Bob. All right, Bob, also a BYU fan. Thank you, Bob, for your support as always. Bob says, any thoughts on protected rivalries? Should there be more or fewer? Would you swap KU for Farmageddon? That's a good one. Farmageddon did not wind up being protected, so you're not going to get K-State and Iowa State, and it's 27, right, guys? 27 when that game won't happen. I didn't care as much about the protected rivalry thing as many people did. I understand why people do. K-State, Iowa State's one of the longest continuous series in college football history. Obviously, it's the second biggest or biggest, depending on, I guess, who you are. And that relates to your second question. But as a K-State fan, I think you would say biggest or second biggest game on the schedule every year. You're running low on rivalries, right? Nebraska and Missouri aren't in the conference anymore. So you take that away. That kind of sucks to not have it on the schedule. I understand all that. I also understand that with 16 teams, it's really tough to make all this work from a scheduling standpoint. And some of this is just a byproduct of college football has gotten itself into a really stupid place where we have these massive conferences that don't make much sense. And that becomes very difficult for a lot of things, travel being one, but scheduling being another. So I have a little more grace, I think, for the Big 12 on this than some people do. Would I swap KU for Farmageddon? I would not. I would not. I think I would rather keep the in-state rivalry thing going. Farmageddon is great. It's become a really hot rivalry lately. And, by lately, like last decade, that's really heated up between K-State and Iowa State. But there's still something, more ingrained in me where I'd rather see the Sunflower Showdown every single year. So I would not trade it. But it's a good question, Bob. It is a very good question. So there it is on Venmo. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you would like to hit me up with a question or comment if you're not watching this live right now. So thank you for that. Okay. Look, if you're the Big 12 right now, you're rooting for as much chaos as possible between the Big 10 and the SEC. There's no doubt about that. And one of those potential chaos agents Tony Petiti, commissioner of the Big Ten, is set to finally speak publicly. Now, I know I'll get pushback. Well, he did that interview with Joel Klatt. Okay, fair enough. But it is a little bit different taking questions at a podium where it probably won't be quite as friendly. It can be much... You get a wider variety of questions coming at you from the podium. So get your popcorn ready for the Tony Petiti show this week at Big Ten Media Days. I'm very much looking forward to this. And if you're the Big 12, you've got an eye on this, because what's it mean for your future? You are rooting for chaos. You're rooting for a rift between the Big Ten and the SEC. You're obviously rooting for your future. You're going to need to pay attention to the next step in all of this, the college football playoff future, which... next step is coming with Petiti actually up there speaking. So Greg Sankey, again, to defend him, which I do not take any pleasure in doing, but Greg Sankey has had to shoulder a lot of the load of criticism for everything that the Big Ten and the SEC have done, because he's a guy that makes himself more publicly available. He does get this reputation of being kind of like a Sith Lord, like a very evil figure, the bad guy in the movie, Cruella de Vil. That's the reputation of Greg Sankey, and some of that is because he'll just go out and talk and say it and be straight up. And I guess in that respect, have to give him credit for that. He doesn't hide or shy away from any of this. I lead the SEC. We are the best conference out there. I'll talk about it willingly if you want me to. That's kind of Greg Sankey's attitude. Whereas Tony Petiti has come into the Big Ten and been very much more in the shadows, but a lot of the reporting would indicate that the Big Ten has kind of pushed forward a lot of this stuff just as much, if not much more, than the Big Ten, especially when it comes to playoff expansion. And so there's been a disproportionate amount of the load and criticism shared by Sankey, because he's the guy that has to go talk and deal with questions most of the time. When everybody thought that we were going to get 4 auto bids for the Big Ten and the SEC both, and there was a lot of pushback on that initially, Tony Petiti never really came out and said anything. It was Greg Sankey having to take the arrows and the bullets from everybody. Some of that, too, is just, the SEC has been a little bit more outwardly arrogant as a conference, rightfully so in some cases, but that also will draw more attention to you, sure. But Petiti has done, I think, a very calculated job of just staying in the shadows, just lurking there, not having to come out and say much. It's been the Big Ten pushing playoff expansion harder behind the scenes. It's why now they're the party here that's very, very much upset about not getting this 4-4-2-2 format. Sankey is the one who has said a bunch over the last 4, 5, 6 months, and then went up at the podium first at SEC Media Days, obviously did other interviews. His latest comments came on the Paul Feinbaum show that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But he's been out there. So now what's going to happen when Petiti gets up there? And like I said, he did do an interview with Joel Klatt. I guess credit where it's due on that, but that is a media partner. Okay. Joel Klatt's a color commentator. Look, Joel Klatt is excellent. I would take Joel over, I think, any color commentator in the game right now. But he's not exactly like a guy that's just going to grill you and put you in the hot seat. Big Ten media members / national media that's going to be at Big Ten Media Days this week will probably ask some more prodding, difficult questions. What's the tone and message going to be from Petiti? Because I think both of those things are important. Tone and message. Obviously, the content of his message will be very important. We know that the Big Ten is not real thrilled right now with the SEC kind of reversing course and joining up with the Big 12/ACC proposed 5+11 plan. So we know that they're not really happy. Is it going to be Tony Petiti being frustrated up there? Is it going to be Tony Petiti coming out and defiantly making a case, pounding the table for 4-4-2-2? Will he just kind of pass on it and not really say much? There are a lot of different routes you can go, and I don't really have a grasp on Petiti at all as far as what I would expect. Greg Sankey, you kind of know what to expect. He'll be pretty straight up with it. He's going to be, in some ways, a level of cocky, earned in a lot of ways, again, for the SEC. But he's going to be very confident, bordering on cocky, and will just be pretty straightforward with it. I don't really know how Tony Petiti is going to act about this. Like his actions here would suggest to me maybe you just punt on it and kind of tuck away in the shadows again. I know he did address it somewhat head on with Joel Klatt, but I just don't know. Will he show frustration with the SEC? Because Greg Sankey was pretty real about the situation, but didn't, he took the high road for the most part. And that's some of what I want to read right here. Some comments that he had on the Paul Feinbaum show on Thursday. So this was after Sankey's initial comments. He just comes on the Feinbaum show to address specifically like, hey, rumors that there is some kind of big rift between the Big Ten and the SEC. And look, regardless of what he says here, there is a rift. You can argue about, and Greg Sankey can tell you, well, it still is we have a pretty friendly, good working relationship. That's fine. But this is a big rift. I mean, this is something that clearly is a high priority for the Big Ten. They thought they had the SEC right there after they had been working together on a number of things, and the SEC flipped. There's a rift. You can say that the relationship is still good and not harmed long-term, and that may well be true. But for now, this is a pretty big rift. But now, here's the direct quote from Greg Sankey. Quote, there is no rift between the SEC and Big Ten commissioners. We have different views. That's okay. Sankey, now I'm reading from an On3 article. Sankey told Feinbaum that the idea the two do not speak is false. The SEC commissioner said he spoke to Petiti 4 times last week, which, okay, you guys speak. What's the tone of those conversations? What's the content of those conversations? I don't know that I would have taken them not speaking as them speaking versus not speaking doesn't make a lot of difference to me. It's what's the actual relationship they're like? How much frustration is there? And where will this lead? Sankey also said, quote, this again was on Thursday, quote, we talked this morning. We talked about our different views, disagreements. Fine. There's going to be a lot of times when we agree. There will be times when we agree on most things. That's okay. So Sankey is trying to calm everybody down a little bit. And look, regardless of what's going on behind the scenes, I do think it's a pretty smart move by Sankey to just publicly say, chill out, nothing to see here. Everything is fine. Nobody needs to be up in arms about anything. That doesn't serve anybody to project that other than the Big 12 or the ACC or anybody outside of the SEC and Big 10. As nasty, as weird, as crazy as that could get would be best for everybody involved that is not wearing an SEC or a Big Ten patch, right? But as I said, the Big Ten is really the party that's aggrieved here. So it's easier for Greg Sankey to go out there and just be like, hey, it's cool. We're fine. Yes, we disagree on some things, but it's okay. We'll be fine. That's because the SEC is the party that switched. They're the party that was on board for 4-4-2-2 and then was like, hey, actually, let's do 5+11, or like, hey, we're cool, just keeping it at 12. That's fine. Well, the Big Ten's sitting there like, no. You were working with us. We said we wanted to expand because we've got this monster league at 18 teams. We want to expand. We want to do 4-4-2-2. We thought we had this. You're the ones that switched up on us. So that's why, to me, it's much more intriguing for a variety of reasons as to what Sankey is going to, or what Petiti will say versus what Sankey will say. So is he going to be aggressive on the podium? Will this be like a Brett Yormark type of performance where Brett Yormark, to me, very clearly wanted to go out and set the tone and set a preemptive narrative to try and combat what will surely be narratives that come at his conference in a negative way from others throughout the year. Hey, we're going to get 2 teams in the playoff. Brett Yormark was very much we're going to get 2 teams in the playoff. I'm doubling down on 5+11. Here's what I think. You are left with no questions about where Brett Yormark is at on all of that. We took away the media poll because it hurt Arizona State last year. We're not going to let you guys do that. We're not going to arm you with that again. Here's where we're at. Brett Yormark was pretty aggressive. Will Tony Petiti choose an aggressive tone? Will he show any frustration? Will he try and move his agenda forward by speaking publicly? Because that certainly can be a tactic. Or does he just punt? duck and hide and kind of do the same thing that he's basically been doing for a while. Frankly, if I were a Big Ten fan, I think I'd probably want him to come out swinging. Like, hey, man, I hate the SEC. And now look, they're trying to backstab us here. They're trying to turn around and get more at-large bids. They think they'll be able to earn more of those, and they're screwing us out of everything that we wanted. They're not going to go to a 9-game conference schedule. They are ducking us. I hate the SEC. Look what they're doing to us. Commish, go out there and go at him. Put Sankey in his place. But if I'm a Big 12 fan, honestly, that's kind of exactly what I would want to happen too. I want Tony Petiti to come out swinging, dude. I want Tony Petiti to come out swinging as well. And I would very much love for him to strike that up, muddy the waters, get it messy, and get the Big Ten and SEC fighting. So, look, get your popcorn. I don't know that you'll need it so much for ACC Media Days. I would expect Jim Phillips to fall in line mostly with where Brett Yormark is at on this. Although, the ACC has been feisty about things. Jim Phillips sometimes is feisty and interesting. He has started to turn that narrative around on me at least a little bit from where I thought it was like a year or two ago. But I don't know that there's a whole lot of a play. I guess it'll be, interesting to hear him in light of the settlement with Clemson, Florida State. Now everybody assuming that league is going to be basically done by 2030. We'll see. We'll see if he has anything to come after everybody else, Florida State, Clemson, et cetera, or everybody who's saying that league is going to crumble. We'll see if he has anything to say as far as that goes. Okay. Good recap there of where we're at heading into this week, heading into Big Ten Media Days. Jeremy, I was reading your question here. Jeremy says, John, I'm pulling this up because, Jeremy, I just heard it earlier today. I was listening to the Solid Verbal Big 12 preview. Shout out to those guys. Love them. Excellent college football podcast that you guys should all check out. Jeremy says, John, can you explain to your buddies over at the Solid Verbal why it benefited the Big 12 to cancel the media poll? They didn't get it. It seemed like it was mainly a Dan take that he didn't get it. And he made one of the arguments that I have heard from those who don't like the idea. And that was, hey, and I'm paraphrasing here, so you go listen to it. I don't obviously have Dan's audio to play for you to let him basically defend himself and his take. I'll get to the super chats in just a moment too, guys. I'm sorry. I just happened to see this from Jeremy. But Dan basically said, look, Arizona State was picked last and then they won the league. Like, that's a huge story. You should be promoting those stories. Like, stories like that are good for the league. I heard a Kansas City radio host make very similar argument while we were at Media Days or just after. And I remember thinking, like, okay, it is definitely a story. I understand the thinking, like, hey, that's a story. You should promote it for your league. It's not, I don't think it's a story that benefits the league, though, especially when everybody is so predisposed to think that the league is not that great. And the Solid Verbal guys closed by saying, and I do agree with them on this, you can be a good team and win the Big 12. You don't necessarily need to be a great team. Doesn't mean that there can't be a great team in the Big 12, but you can probably win the league by being a good team by nature of the league. I think that is probably true, but when that's what everybody thinks about the league, then if you're a team that's picked last and went 3-9 the year before, and you're up at the top of the standings, like, people rightly or wrongly are going to take that as a sign that you are a poor league, that you are not a good league. And I guess we just fundamentally disagree on that. I think there are a lot of people, more people at least than I would have expected, that are on that side of things. To me, it seemed pretty clear that Arizona State, and again, don't forget BYU. I will continue to, until I'm blue in the face, say that I do think the Big 12 could have messaged that better and said, look, BYU had a better resume than Miami. Objectively true. Better win. Better strength of schedule. Better strength of record. They were not considered at all for an at-large spot, while Miami was just barely on the outside looking in. BYU got really hurt by the fact that not only Arizona State won the league while being picked 16th, and everybody said, well, of course, the league's not any good. But also, BYU was picked 13th. They were the story for 2/3 of the season by going unbeaten, starting 9-0. And then the second they lost, everybody was like, well, yeah, they're not a good team. They were picked 13th. Like, of course, the Big 12 is just not a very good league. I think those narratives definitely did hurt the Big 12. So we disagree. That's okay. I still have all the respect in the world for those guys. And one of the things that I respect about them is the fact that they put as much effort into their Big 12 preview as they did. Like, those guys know ball and they know what they're talking about with the Big 12. And, without naming names, that's not always the case. If you go listen to National College Football Podcast right now, they treat every league with a ton of respect and they give it attention, which is hard to come by nationally for the Big 12 right now. So we disagree, but that's okay. That's okay. Still love and respect those guys. Okay, let's get to the supers. Joe, thank you, Joe. Appreciate you being here, Joe. Sick TCU logo there. I was looking at alt logos for teams in the Big 12 earlier for my tier list that's coming up. So I was just looking that over. Joe also says, hot take, TCU has a top 30 offense and defense and wins the Big 12. It will probably take that, Joe, with TCU's schedule. I think it will probably take that for TCU to win the Big 12. TCU having a top 30 offense is not a hot take at all. I mean, now they need a better running game. Like, a lot was on the shoulders of Josh Hoover last year, who threw for, almost 4,000 yards. But their Big 12 schedule this year, man, at Arizona State, Colorado at home, at K-State, Baylor at home, at West Virginia, tricky, Iowa State at home, at BYU, and then they close with at Houston and Cincinnati. I mean, that's a tough schedule. So they will need a top 30 defense. They will need a much better running game, but they played better football at the end of last year. Sonny Dykes has been to a national championship game, and Josh Hoover is a stud. I don't think there's any denying that. So I like it, Joe. That qualifies as hot. Warm. I would say warm take, because TCU to me is in tier 2, and some of that is schedule based. But I like it, Joe. I like the confidence. David, what's up, David? All right, so David, good perspective here. David is a Nebraska fan. We were talking about Tony Petiti there in the open. David says Tony P is not worried. His conference schools made $10 million more per school compared to SEC schools because of conference scheduling. 9 SEC conference games just around the corner. We'll see. There was some conflicting reporting on that last week. We had, it was one of the ESPN guys. Was it Chris Lowe, maybe, who had a piece out that was kind of insinuating that there was some thought, hey, the SEC may actually get over the hump to 9 games. And then Ross Dellinger had some reporting that seemed to be a little bit on the other side of that. We'll see. I know that money talks. You are correct that money talks. And I get where you're going with that. Like, eventually, hey, if they continue to be behind financially, they'll just do it. They'll just go ahead and make the flip. But for right now, I still think that's a bit up in the air. I certainly don't think it's coming next year, which they've got to make a decision on that pretty soon. But is Tony Petiti, look, and there are levels to what we're talking about, David. Is Tony Petiti worried about anything like tangibly, like the long term of the league? Is he worried about falling drastically behind the SEC or anything like that based on what the playoff format is going to be? No. But they've got rich problems. And just because you're rich doesn't mean that you don't still care about those problems. They're still problems that matter to everybody, this playoff format. And look, you start getting a bunch of money. Everybody wants more. Big Ten schools, I will say this too. Big Ten schools have bigger athletic departments with more Olympic sports to fund. And so they may be under a little bit more financial pressure with rev share now to make sure that as much money as possible is coming in so that they can keep the water polo team going, keep the equestrian team going, whatever it might be, all those other sports that we don't think about as much. So those can be stressors and things that we'll see, it could force you to get a little more amped up at the podium. Allan, what's up, Allan? Thank you, Allan, for being here. Allan says, John, my hot take, Jayhawks 10-3 this season, only losses at Texas Tech, at Iowa State, and Utah. 10th win over some mid-tier SEC opponent. Okay, so 9-3, beat somebody in the bowl game. Jalen Daniels in the Heisman discussion, Rock Chalk Jayhawk Allan. Definitely a hot take, Allan. I have Kansas, I think, like 7 or 8 wins right now. But probably like a 6 to 8 range is where I feel like Kansas will be. Just a lot of they lost so much. Jalen Daniels being back is huge. And I think Kansas did a reasonably good job on paper in the transfer portal in trying to replace really like receivers and secondary, to me, are the two places I would start there. But it is just a lot. It's a lot to be replacing. And Jalen Daniels, between injuries and last year, not whatever you want to call it, rust, not being in sync with the offensive coordinator, just not a good offensive coordinator in general. You're welcome, Wisconsin. You can say whatever it is you will about him, but it's just been an inconsistent career. And so I think expecting that Jalen Daniels is suddenly going to throw together a dynamic season from start to finish for the first time in his career is putting a lot of faith in something that we haven't actually seen happen, though he has tantalized you at times. Now, I will say this, Allan, if Kansas is going to win 10 games, if they're going to go 9-3 in the regular season, maybe it takes Jalen Daniels being in the Heisman discussion because of everything I just said. A lot of new. He's the vet. He's the wily vet. Someone had flashed some K-State KU highlights on Twitter the other day, and I saw the interception, the pick six that he threw in the COVID game, 2020 in Manhattan when he was 17 years old. I mean, that guy's been around forever. So it may take that, Allan. But that's a good hot take. That's a good hot take. Thank you, my friend. You did it right. I would expect nothing less from you, Allan. Thanks for being here. Hey, Texas Football Channel, what's up? Texas Football Channel says, service Johan. What's up, Texas Football Channel? Great content as always. One should not underestimate Houston's potential this season. All right, I love the emphasis on this season. Texas Football Channel is saying, look, don't just give me this cursory, hey, Willie Fritz is a really good coach. I like Willie Fritz. Good things are coming for Houston. He's saying right now, not in the future, but right now. In Fritz we trust. Go Big 12. Hey, I love the confidence. I said the other day, Connor Wigman definitely elevates the ceiling of this team. Okay. Absolutely does. They should be much better at quarterback. I think Willie Fritz will make big strides like throughout his career. Dude's been a program builder. Program builder every step of the way, continues to move up the ladder, and it always seems to go pretty well. The coordinators, I think two new coordinators, losing Sheil Wood. Connor Wigman has had injury issues, so you got to keep him healthy. You know, if I'm going to talk about quarterback injuries like I was a second ago, I definitely need to include Wigman in that. So I will just say, we're talking hot takes here. You didn't give me like a specific number or anything, but if it's that, Houston's going to, I think last show was that someone said Houston will finish in the top 5 of the Big 12. That I just listed out why I think would be a hot take. But Houston fans, I would love it for you if that happened. I would love it if Willie Fritz jumped up and did that. I mean, you guys deserve it right now. It's been a tough couple of years in the Big 12, and I think you hired well. And Willie Fritz also, I think, kind of alluded to it in an interview that I did with him on Media Radio Row at Big 12 Media Days. Like, resource wise, they're competing from behind a little bit, so that's another thing that's tough. But Fritz is the type of dude that can definitely outperform the level of talent on his roster. Anyway, Texas Football Channel, thank you for being here. Thank you for your support of the Cougs. Okay. All right. I think we're caught up on the hot takes, the super chats for right now. Hit me with your hot takes in the chat. And if you want to guarantee that you make it on tonight, click the $ below the chat box in order to do that. Okay. So the media, the coaches, the fans in the Big 12 all did unofficial polls, but polls nonetheless. And they all picked the same Big 12 champion. That would be K-State. All three of those. The coaches, via Brett McMurphy, picked K-State, Iowa State in the Big 12 title game with K-State winning. The media picked K-State number 1 in the preseason unofficial poll from the Gambling Gauchos. The fan poll that I had you guys submit to, everybody voted there, picked the Big 12 champ to be K-State. The players, who I also surveyed, I talked to about 30 of them at Big 12 Media Days. The players picked K-State to finish tied for 6th. They do not agree. They have a totally different champion. In fact, a tie atop the league. So what gives here? 2 questions. Why the difference? And can we trust the players? I've got some data on that. So let's dive into this. All right. I mentioned Gambling Gauchos. Shout out to my boys there. They did the unofficial media poll. We talked about it last week. K-State was the pick to win the league there, which by that point was not very surprising to me. I've seen enough love for them. I gave you my theory on that. In a nutshell, when you're dealing with teams and programs that have really oscillated quite a bit, Arizona State was 3-9. Then all of a sudden they're a play away from the semifinals of the college football playoff. Like, okay, wow, huge jump, but can I trust that with a 34-year-old head coach dealing with expectations for the first time? We'll see. When you are wanting to talk about a Baylor team that almost fired its head coach midway through last year, or people certainly felt like that was coming, and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to put them in there, or like Texas Tech spent all this money in the portal, but they haven't had a double-digit win season since 2009. Like, all of this is tough, and in that world, you can say, well, I know Chris Kleiman. If it's not a COVID year, as long as there's not a pandemic, he's going to win 8 games. Minimum. He'll be in the conversation. So it feels like a more safe pick. That was my theory on why this all happened. And it's my theory on why K-State had the most votes of anybody among the coaches when Brett McMurphy asked them to pick a first and second place finisher. Iowa State didn't get a single vote to win the league, but they had 7, I believe it was, runner-ups. So they were right there, but the pick was K-State to win the league. The fan poll, if you want to see the fan poll, I will show you what the results of it were. If you are a subscriber to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, you got a chance to vote in it. If you follow me on Twitter at JL Kurtz, you got a chance to vote in it. OFBnews.com, by the way, to subscribe to said newsletter. But here it is. Here are the results of the poll. So K-State out in front, Texas Tech, Arizona State, BYU, pretty neck and neck there for 3, Baylor, Iowa State, Utah, TCU, West Virginia. Now, the fan poll, I'm not telling you to put as much stock in this, and it's nothing against you, the fans. I'm not. Look, I am a part of the media that created the preseason media poll last year that could not have been more wrong and more comically wrong. So that is not a slight to the fans and the fans' knowledge of the league or the teams or anything like that. But this is skewed toward my followers, of which I obviously have a lot of K-State followers. I have a lot of BYU followers. So things can be a little bit skewed there, just in the interest of full transparency. But that was at least a sampling of fans. I thought that would still be interesting to see. So everybody's on K-State there. Everybody's on K-State there. But I go talk to the players. And I can remember as I was doing this, it's over the course of 2 days in Frisco, Big 12 Media Days, and you're trying to go find players, pull them off to the side. A lot of times it's when they're in between different media obligations. And you would just go pull them aside for a little bit. And so it's kind of, just a mad dash. I get in when I can to try and get all these guys. Unfortunately, not something I can just set up like officially where everybody comes to me. But I got almost all the way through the first day. And I remember thinking at one point, I was like, this is very interesting. This is very interesting because I have not heard a single player say K-State yet. And K-State has been dominating most of what I've seen recently. I had also not heard anybody say Utah, and Utah at that point had taken over as the FanDuel favorite in the odds market there. So it's like, this is pretty fascinating where the players are at. Day 2, it's still going pretty much that same way. And when the dust settled, there were co-champions according to the players. The players picked a tie atop the Big 12 standings. 5 selected Arizona State, 5 selected Texas Tech. Okay, so you have the returning champion and the team that generated the most headlines this offseason because of the money spent in Texas Tech. Baylor was not far behind. Baylor got 4. Iowa State 3, BYU 2, TCU 1, Utah 1, K-State 1, Colorado 1, Kansas 1. So K-State, some context here. K-State, the team that was picked to win by the coaches and the media, got the same amount of votes to win from the players as Colorado and Kansas. That's pretty fascinating, right? Like what is going on here with the players? And I'm not saying that this is a perfect sample size, taking a sample of basically 30 players. There were a couple that told me like, dude, I don't even know. You guys know. Nobody can predict this conference. Sample of 30 players. Not a perfect representation of everybody, but interesting nonetheless, because the players that are here are essentially the best players throughout the league, right? Like teams get to choose who they're bringing. They're not going to bring players that they think are bad. They're not going to think they're not going to bring guys who are just new to the roster, freshmen that may not have a good grasp on things. You would expect these to be guys that are a little bit more plugged in, right? Leadership type of guys that are coming. My thought was this. One, Sam Levitt absolutely dominated. This is a little bit of a spoiler to another piece of the anonymous player survey. Sam Levitt absolutely dominated the vote for best quarterback. The players overwhelmingly think that he's the best quarterback in the league, and so you can pretty easily just carry that out. Hey, makes a lot of sense. If I think Arizona State has the best quarterback in the league by a wide margin, of course, I'm going to think that they're the best team in the league. I will pick them to win. That's a pretty easy, you want to simplify football about as much as you can. That's a pretty easy way to do it. But they also had a lot to say when I was asking about NIL and money. A lot of conversations about Texas Tech and a lot of comments about, man, they're paying an offensive lineman $5.1 million. Now, I know that's been a little bit disputed, might be incentive-based, but everybody saw the headline of the number one player in the state of Texas that Tech signed out of high school, who the headline was $5.1 million deal. They know, the players do. They are keenly aware of the money being thrown around by Texas Tech right now. So I felt like some of that attention and the players looking around like, damn, like, hey, man, I know what I'm getting paid. If they're doing that for an offensive lineman, a high school kid, like, they must be serious. They must be serious. And I saw that they've got the number one portal class. And all. To me, it felt like there was a lot of that going on with Texas Tech. And you know what? That's a perfectly respectable take and opinion to have. Baylor, I kind of felt like, hey, if it's anybody that played Baylor in the second half of last season and they saw Sawyer Robertson, man, I can understand why they would be pretty high on the Bears and where they are at. Now, I guess that doesn't specifically explain why K-State would not be getting more love or more votes. But as far as why Texas Tech and Arizona State, I think to me that's the most plausible explanation there. But can we trust the players? That was the other question that I asked. I asked two questions. Why did it come out this way? And then two, can we trust the players? And based on last year, the answer is emphatically no. But the answer would also last year have been an emphatic no on the media, as I have already explained here. If you would have polled anybody last year, I think you definitely would have had them look very, very wrong. But I'm sorry, Arizona fans. I don't mean to chuckle, but I went back and looked at my survey from last year. The school that got 5 votes and therefore won the player vote last year to win the league was Arizona. That obviously went disastrously. Now, I tend to think that's like the players really like Noah Fafita and Tedero McMillan, and they were generating a lot of buzz. That a great bowl game performance, in a fairly high-profile bowl game. Alamo Bowl is going to be one of the most watched outside of the New Year's Six. May have just generated a lot of juice out of that. Some intrigue with Arizona being in the league for the first time. Apparently, there was a lot of intrigue for a couple newcomers because Utah was just behind at 4. Utah finished 5-7. Oklahoma State was 3rd. Oklahoma State went 3-9. Didn't win a game in the league. So the players' top 3 last year did not work out well at all. Obviously, nobody picked Arizona State. I don't know that I need to say that, but that is true. So the players cannot be trusted just like, well, basically anybody else when predicting the Big 12. But interesting to see how different things are as we head into Big 12 play. I will continue to say I was surprised at how much things started to seemingly unify around K-State as we got deeper and deeper into the offseason. I didn't expect that this year. I thought people would see the inconsistencies of last year and ended the season cold, like the opposite of what happened to Baylor, where Baylor ended the season hot and they've generated a lot of positive buzz because of it. Kind of the opposite deal with K-State, but still a lot of positivity there. A lot of positivity there from folks. Okay, let's hop back into the Super Chats. Let's see. David. What's up, David? David says, would have thought the Bionic Dollar Raiders would be the favorites. Well, the players agree with you, David. The players like the Bionic Dollars Raiders. Texas Tech spending the money. They got the prediction from the players along with Arizona State. So there is a lot of love for Texas Tech, but I do think there is some well-earned skepticism as well. You guys know that based on principle, the fact that they burned me a couple of years ago and that we haven't seen it happen since 2009, I have been very skeptical. 2008, I guess. 2008 was the double digit, right? And they win 9 games in 2009. Since Michael Crabtree, Mike Leach, we have not seen it. So on principle, I'm avoiding that. But I did have a Tech fan get kind of upset with me on Twitter and was like, hey, stuff happens for the first time all the time. Like the next year, that's not a very fair way. And I said, okay, fine. Still, to me, it's on principle. But if you really want me to get into it, I love Joey McGuire as a dude. Love him. Love talking to him. I think he's an excellent recruiter. I think it does take legitimate recruiting chops. It's not just the money here. I think he knows how to sell what he's doing. I don't know that he knows how to coach on the field well enough to win a Big 12 championship. I'm still not sure of that. I'm still not sure that Baron Morton has the ceiling to produce in high leverage moments consistently against the best teams in the league. I'm not sure that talent. I think it's a challenge in and of itself to get all that talent to come together when they haven't played together before and you're infusing so much new to a locker room. I am a K-State basketball fan. I watched how one of the most expensive rosters in college basketball produced no postseason last year. So I have legitimate, I think, skepticism and doubts there. But hey, David, the players are on board. The players are on board, and I very well might be wrong. Joe, what's up, Joe? Thank you for chiming in again. Joe says, is anyone going to say anything about Big 12 players dropping in rankings and stars once they commit to a Big 12 school over an SEC or Big 10 school? Look, I've seen a lot of the Twitter noise about that. I've seen people very frustrated by it. I think I've said this before, Joe, because this has come up a lot over the last few years that people get very upset about this. I'm just used to it. I don't know. As a K-State fan, I can remember going back years, this type of thing happening and seeming like it was always a little like, hey, this seems a little crazy. Or then, guy decommits and all of a sudden starts jumping up the rankings. If you lose him to a Big 10 or an SEC school, it just seems par for the course. When we talk about like perception issues with the conference, and this is again why I would make that argument that like the preseason poll thing matters. Everybody's expectation is, well, this isn't as good of a league. So obviously, like if the kid's committed to go play at Texas Tech, how good could he possibly be? But if he's committed to go play at Texas, obviously he's awesome. He's amazing. I think it's just, preseason or preconceived notions that everybody has. And it feels very deeply ingrained into the whole system. I'm not saying that it's an outright conspiracy. See, this is where I'll differ a little bit from like some Big 12 fans too. I'm not saying this is like an organized outright conspiracy where everybody is like, has a signal group chat where they're just messaging every day about, all right, I'm at on 3. How do we make sure and lower this kid? And then the guy from, I almost said Scout, rest in peace, Scout. I'm at on 3. All right, I'm at 24/7. Let's make sure that we link up and get this to get, so that we can screw the recruit that just decommitted from Houston and committed somewhere else. Let's go ahead and pump him up the rankings. I don't think anything like that is going on. I just think it's what's embedded in everybody's brain. And that's the problem. And it's what the Big 12 fights every day. I think there's just a natural inclination to think, well, if he's a Big 12 player, he's not going to be as good. He's not as good. So, yeah, I get the frustration, Joe. I'm just a little more resigned to, hey, it is what it is. It's been happening for a while. It's a part of a bigger problem. It's kind of like a symptom of a bigger problem and disease that's going on to me. And I know then people, then it influences how, Bud Elliott and company just released their Blue Chip Ratio podcast, and they'll talk about that and the roster's not being as talented and throw the recruiting rankings in your face. The bottom line is if you send more guys to the NFL, that will start mattering less. So forget what the rankings are, how much they're getting changed. Send more guys to the NFL, and that narrative will start to change. But it was we saw the numbers. I'm not even going to repeat the numbers from this year because they do not look good for the Big 12 at all. They're not pretty. So the Big 12 needs to get more guys drafted. Just prove it. The guy that you think got ranked too low because he committed to your school, turn him into a pro. Turn him into a first-round draft pick, and maybe you can help change some of those narratives. Pacific Northwest Ute says Jimbo called to say that money isn't everything. Boy, Pacific Northwest Ute coming after the Texas Tech Red Raiders with that one. Harkening Jimbo Fisher. Well, actually, Jimbo, Pacific Northwest Ute, I might challenge you on this and say Jimbo might say actually it's emphatically all about the money because he got like $70 million just to go away and gets to hang out on his ranch now. So I don't know. That seems like a pretty good deal. Has any college football coach like period become richer than Jimbo Fisher, like full stop? And he did it just by taking a bunch of oil money, buying a very overhyped roster that couldn't come together and riding off into the sunset. Allowed Jameis Winston to steal crab legs and got a national championship and then a $70 million buyout. Pretty good gig if you can get it. Pretty good gig if you can get it. I kid a little bit with you, Pacific Northwest Ute. Thank you for being here. Houston Cougars, Germany. What's up, Houston Cougars, Germany? Hot take, Houston 9, others 3. All right, hang on. Connor Wegman at quarterback. Tanner, Caziola at tight end. Amari Thomas, Harvey Broussard, Steven Johnson, Mekhi Muse, Dean Connors, Keontae Scott, Jordan Allen. So I assume this is what is the hot take here, I guess, is what I'm asking for, specifically Houston Cougars, Germany, because I appreciate your support and thank you for being here, my friend. Let me see if I can scroll up just to make sure I'm not missing what specifically is the hot take here. I think you're just sort of supplementing like, hey, I think, you're picking Houston to go 9-3. That's what this is. Okay, I'm an idiot. I'm sorry, Houston Cougars, Germany. You're picking Houston to go 9-3. Hot take, qualifies, good, love it. You're giving us a breakdown of the new weapons here. I do like the skill position weapons that Connor Wegman will have at his disposal. Again, some of my concern is Connor Wegman health. And you're asking for the offense to come a long way from last year, a long way from where it was. Now, I know it's not going to be like Zion Chris all year at quarterback, hopefully, if Connor Wegman is healthy. But that combined with, I worry a little bit about a step back on defense. We shall see. But I love, look, this is the time of year to be optimistic. This is the time of year to drop in hot takes. I said hot takes. Houston fans are blowing me up lately, and I love it. I don't tend to hear a ton from Houston fans here. So I appreciate that you guys are this fired up about your squad right now. Houston Cougars, Germany, thank you very much, my friend. And I can't say anything because K-State took it on the chin at Houston last year in a driving rainstorm in a game that I still have nightmares about. So, Connor Wegman wasn't even playing in that game, Houston Cougars, Germany. He wasn't even playing in that game. Thank you, my friend. Okay, we got to rank Big 12 stadiums here before I get out of here. We got to rank Big 12 stadiums. Who do the players say is the toughest stadium to play in the Big 12? We're going to answer that question. They have a pretty emphatic answer. And I will tell you if I agree, because I'm about to rank Big 12 stadiums, put them in tiers. Okay, this is what everybody does. Nobody wants to give you a ranking 1 to 10. We do tiers. Shout out to tiermaker.com. So we're about to do the Big 12 stadium tier list where I rank everything by tiers. Now, let me first give you the results from the players. All right, I surveyed about 30 players at Big 12 Media Days, asked them toughest place to play, and an emphatic 13 of them said it is Lavelle Edwards Stadium in Provo, Utah at BYU. 13 for Provo, okay? Now, I've been to a game there, all right? I have also been to a game at Boone Pickens Stadium at Oklahoma State, which finished second in the player vote with 5. Rice-Eccles Stadium, Utah, that got 3. I have not been to a game there. I have been to plenty of games at Jones AT&T Stadium at Texas Tech. That also got 3 votes. Amon G. Carter at TCU. I've been to multiple games there. It got 2. Jack Trice Stadium, multiple games there. It got 1. I've not been to Mountain America Stadium at Arizona State. It got 1. I have been to games at Folsom Field. It has been a long time, but I've been to games at Folsom Field in the Dan Hawkins era, if that dates it for you. It got 1 vote. Bill Snyder Family Stadium, K-State. I have been to probably hundreds of games by this point. There, it got 1. So that's how the players feel. Now let's find out how I feel about all this. All right. I will share my screen here with you, my friends, so that we can start the tier list of Big 12 stadiums. Here we go. All right. We're going to go Arizona first here. All right. Arizona. And I tried to shout out to the logos here, guys. Pay attention to the logos. I didn't want this to be boring. I tried to pick some cool alternate logos as much as I could. And look, Arizona's going in the D tier. My apologies to Arizona fans and Brent Brennan, but I feel like that is only fair right now. I know that the program looked much different at this time last year. I had them in the C tier last year. If you look at the numbers, 36 and 32 in the last decade, but 3 and 4 at home last year and only one conference win. Houston was the only conference win for Arizona last year. If the team were better, I understand the environment would be better. If we're doing this relative to the rest of the conference, I think it's only fair. There's not a whole lot of juice for Arizona right now. Now, meanwhile, on the other side, we've got Arizona State. Okay. Arizona State is next up. And this was a really interesting one for me. Like, what do I do with this? Mountain America Stadium was in the C tier last year. I considered C tier here, but I think we got to move the Sun Devils up to the B tier. We got to move the Sun Devils up to the B tier here. They had a great season at home last year. Great season to move up here. A well-earned boost for Mountain America. 6-0 at home. It's a big student body, big alumni base, party school. So look, the students, man, if you give them a reason to make that the party, which last year it turned into, you make that the party, you can get that place pretty loud, pretty rocking. Sleeping Giant vibes, obviously, out there in Tempe. And even last 10 years, 43 and 25, still a pretty solid record there, even though, there's been a lot of bad football and just wonky things happening there for a while. West Virginia, next up on the list. West Virginia. Love this West Virginia logo. West Virginia is a tough place to play. I don't think you're dumb if you would put West Virginia in the S tier. I'm going to leave it A tier for right now. But if the program gets up and rolling, man, Mountaineer fans will make that an S tier environment. One of the things that is tougher about going to Milan Puskar Stadium is that it's such a long trip for most teams in the Big 12. So where this hurts West Virginia a lot of times, the extra wear and tear of travel, I actually think this helps out where other teams have to travel so far to get to you that makes it a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging for everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and leave West Virginia up there. The record has been good. 45 and 22 the last 10 years. Look, everybody knows it was not great last year. K-State game in particular, pretty bad for the Mountaineers. But look, I've been there when it's a great atmosphere. I was at the 2012 K-State West Virginia game, among many others. 2014 was also a big K-State West Virginia game. Both were phenomenal atmospheres, at least until in the 2012 game, K-State really took them out of it. But I've seen it at its best. It's awesome. I would highly suggest anybody go check out a game there. It's in the A tier. Now, here's one that has it. The Bounce House, I went back and forth, guys. C tier, B tier. What did I want to do with this? I left the Bounce House in the B tier. I feel like I was feeling nice. I was feeling generous, and don't take offense to this, UCF fans. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and pop this thing off here, make it a little easier for you guys to see. Should have done that earlier. Look, UCF did not have a good year last year. We can blame it on Gus. All right. Its reputation in the AAC was a very tough environment to play in. They're 51 and 19 in the last 10 years there. Last year didn't beat a team with a winning record at home. It was 2 FCS teams in Arizona. That's not good. You got one last shot to stay at least in the B tier in the Bounce House, B tier in the Bounce House, UCF. I'm going to lean on that reputation from the AAC days, okay? Texas Tech. Texas Tech can be a very difficult place to play. I lobbied back and forth between B and A. Kind of just a weird environment, I would say, in Lubbock, but very difficult. Just feels like some weird things have happened at games in Lubbock. I'm going B tier, which is where it was last year, I believe. Let me check that. Yep, Jones AT&T Stadium last year in the B tier. We're going to stay there. The numbers 39 and 29, which I guess maybe I shouldn't be as surprised by because Tech has been kind of a 500 program. But I would have expected that record to be better. Mixed bag last year, beat Arizona State, which obviously aged very well, but lost to Baylor in Colorado. The Baylor game got 50 balled. Not good last season for Joey Maguire and company, but I have been to like 5 games there. When it's bumping, it's bumping. It can be very loud. It can be a really tough place to play. So let me go ahead and give that love to Jones AT&T Stadium. Next up, check out this logo, Utah fans. You think I'm not nice to you? I gave you the Rose Bowl logo. I gave you the Utah with the roses. I know it was not the greatest of years last year for Utah. Rice Eccles still belongs up at the top. It's still an S-tier Big 12 stadium. That's still a really tough environment. I am not looking forward to my Cats having to go play there at the end of the year in November. That's going to be tough. Look, I've got a couple quotes from players here. Players voted it second most difficult place to play in the Big, or third most difficult place to play in the Big 12, rather. Utah 32-6 at home in the last 6 years, even with a 2-4 last season. One player who played in it last year said, Utah, yeah, that place was loud. It was so fun. Another player said, Utah has a really good fan base. They really pop out, and they're not very mean either. They just really love their team. So some love for the Utah environment. Now, would they have been so loving when BYU was there? I don't know. But speaking of BYU, this is one that has moved from A to S tier. There's no drama about this at all. You guys heard earlier what the players said about it. 13 players picked it as the best atmosphere and environment in the Big 12. I was there for the K-State game. It was insane. It was so loud. Just the amount of resources that BYU has poured into the entire in-game atmosphere. The Cougar is great. The players will back me up on this here in just a moment. But just everything, man. So much attention to detail. The fans are awesome. The backdrop is awesome. And it's loud as hell. It's loud as hell. 5-1 last year at Lavelle Edwards. 49-18 the last 11 years. Listen to what players said about it. Okay, these are all direct quotes from players that I talked to. Quote, BYU at night. That damn Cougar. His ass. Look, he had the damn stadium rocking. I promise you. That was the loudest crowd I've ever played against by far. Great quote from a player. Someone else said, I ain't going to lie, BYU. That crowd and that whole environment was something crazy, honestly. That was pretty cool to see. It's a crazy place to play. Another couple, BYU's atmosphere is crazy for sure. They're fans. They're right there. They're ruthless. And finally, BYU fans don't shut up. I thought that was interesting. We got the comment for being nice for Utah fans, and then one player was like, BYU fans don't shut up. That's a good thing. You want it to be very loud. You want it to be very loud. So congratulations to Lavelle Edwards Stadium moving up this year from my tier rankings last year. Now, what do we do with Nippert? Okay, what do we do with Nip at night? What do we do there? Considered C. I'm going to leave Nippert and Cincy in B. Certainly, if I'm leaving the bounce house there, I think I've got to do it for Nippert. 4-9 the last 2 years since Luke Fickell left. That's not a great mark, but it was 31-1 before that. Okay, and I know that's AAC competition. I have to judge it a little bit differently, but a lot of respect for what Cincy had built up in terms of a home field advantage there. I'm going to keep it in B. It may drop down to C before. Look, might take a coaching change to get it back up into like the A tier, but we'll see. We'll see, Cincinnati fans. For right now, I'm going B. Colorado, very interesting one. Very interesting case study because pre-Dion, I mean, you're talking about Colorado in like a D- tier atmosphere. With Dion right now, if you're just in a vacuum, like what these Dion games are like, you're looking at like A or S tier. So I'm going to put it in between at a B tier. These environments are pretty good. I did not make the trip to Colorado this year for the K-State game, but my friends on the beat who are also at BYU said that Colorado was close in terms of the atmosphere and environment for that game because the students, the fans, I mean, it's a party. They show up, celebs on the sideline. It's a tough environment to play in right now. But Colorado before that, it was just dreadful. So it's how much of this is tied to Dion. You don't have this built-up credibility in the stadium because things were so bad for Colorado there for a while. So I'm gonna say they need to stick in B tier for right now, but that's got the chance to keep moving up, man. If Dion sticks around and they keep winning games, Houston, unfortunately, will be the other atmosphere and environment that's in the D tier here. I fully understand, Houston fans. Before you run to the comments, I get it. My Cats lost at Houston last year. I understand. before you run to the comments, I know, I am aware, but that still is not a very menacing environment. It's got to get better. Houston fans are going to need to consistently fill that more often. Obviously, the team winning would help. But right now, guys, I think we gotta admit that that's a D tier environment. That's where it was last year, even though there were wins over K-State and Utah a season ago, that's progress. That's definitely progress. Iowa State, I love this logo so much. This is probably my favorite logo on the whole thing. Iowa State should just use that all the time. Is it A tier? Is it S tier? Is it A tier? Is it S tier? I went back and forth. We're going to go A. We're going to go A. It's a very good environment right now, but it is not infallible, as evidenced by the fact that Iowa State did lose at home last year to Texas Tech. Probably should have lost to UCF as well. But Matt Campbell's 38-21 at home. He's been pretty good at home. That place gets loud. It's a little bit bigger, sneaky big, pushing like 60K, right, at Jack Trice. So it's pretty loud. It's a difficult place to play. I've been there and experienced it multiple times. Iowa State it's a great fan base. They love the team. And Iowa State fans show up when the team's not performing as well, about as good as anybody. They still made that place loud, even like pre-Matt Campbell, before things were really, really rolling. I feel pretty similarly about the environment at K-State. So I know this Power Cat, I don't know, this is a little bastardized, but it's there. We're going to go with Bill Snyder Family Stadium in the A tier. That's one that you could certainly argue for S. I'm going to keep it in A right now. If you start looking at the numbers, I just don't think it's quite in that same category as Utah or Oklahoma State. But look, K-State has been very good at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. 25-9 at home under Chris Kleiman, 50-22 the last 10 years. There always does seem to be like a head-scratching loss in there, or at least at the time feels head-scratching. Arizona State last year, they got walloped, came back to make it look closer than it was, but they got walloped. Iowa State in the snow in 2023, Tulane, Arkansas State. So it has not been totally infallible. But when it's on, I mean, when Bill Snyder Family Stadium's on, I'd put it up against about anywhere else in the league. Just right now, to me, feels a half tick off from that S tier, which is going to include one other team. It will not be the Kansas Jayhawks, but you know what? For the renovations, I'm going to move David Booth Memorial Stadium up from the D tier to the C tier. Last year was tough. Like, what do Kansas is renovating the place. How are you supposed to rank that? Lance Leipold's been pretty good at home. Last year, I'm not even going to give you the record or count anything that happened last year against them. They were not home games. Lance Leipold playing in this stadium pre-renovation, 10-9. Okay. It's definitely getting a lot better. It's becoming a more tough environment. The fans are starting to show up more. The renovations, I'm sure, will add to a lot of excitement this year. And Kansas could be a big mover. Could definitely see them moving up this year. Oklahoma State in the S tier, the A tier, guys. They were 3-9 last year. Didn't win a Big 12 game. I've got enough respect for Boone Pickens, which back in the old Big 12 days when I was traveling, when it was just 10 teams, I mean, I would have put that right up there against Texas and Oklahoma in terms of environments when it is on. But last year was very, very bad. So I considered strongly moving it out of the S tier. But I'm going to give you a 1-year mulligan. 52-19 in the last decade in Stillwater. Great fan base. Very difficult place to play when it is on. TCU and Baylor are very similar to end here. Not big places, programs that have won at a very high clip at times. So how do you square that? I'm going to put it in the B tier. By the way, look at the Roses logo again there for TCU. Found some cool ones. TCU's record actually surprised me. It was better than I thought, which makes sense at home because they've had some 11-plus win seasons. They're 49-21 at home the last 10 years. Last year, a couple brutal losses, Houston and UCF. That's not good. And like I said, having been there multiple times, it's not overly loud. It's not overly big. What is loud is that like train horn. That's from you used to have to shoot video down on the field, and that train horn scared the bejesus out of me a few times. Anyway, what TCU has going for it. I'm going to read you some player quotes here from my anonymous player survey, the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. The fans are kind of mean. The fans are pretty mean in Fort Worth. Now, I got anecdotal stories of the last time, well, when K-State was there during the Big 12 championship season, beers thrown on K-State fans. Lots of K-State fans were not very happy with the TCU students here. And here's what a couple of players said. One said, I would say TCU because the fans get a little rowdy and a little bit unchristian with their trash talk. They started talking about my parents' names. Then another player said, hecklers at TCU. They just want to get a rise out of you, and sometimes they get you. I don't even think I can repeat the things they say on camera. That's how bad it gets. So TCU mean fans might bump you up a category there into the B tier. And you know what? That's what we're going to do with Baylor too. We're going to finish off with Baylor in the B tier, McLean Stadium, a beautiful facility, absolutely beautiful stadium. Love it, having been there multiple times. They're 41-26 at home the last 10 years, but 5-1 last year. Only loss was to BYU, and they really did push them. It's not a place that, to me, again, gets overly loud, but I have seen it pretty close to its best. Early on, first year of the stadium, right? New and exciting, 2014. College game day was in town for a game against K-State, and it was a night game. I thought that environment was good. So I have seen, I think, the best of McLean Stadium. It can be pretty good. I just don't think it's consistently as loud as some of the others here on this list. So that's where we're going with it. And the record, has still been pretty solid, pretty good for Baylor. So I'm sure you guys all agree 100% across the board with everything I've said here about this one. If by some small, minute chance you don't, please let me know about it in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. That all really helps as well. But let me know in the comments what it is that I'm missing here. Man, I'm seeing some Colorado love. Some Colorado love in the chat. In the live chat here, saying that I need to move Colorado up to A. Interesting. Okay. All right. I'm going to get one last look at it, everybody. I'm going to take the screen away here. Bam. You got to look at me. You got to look at me. Okay. Fun show tonight. Appreciate you all being here. Please do like the video. Please do subscribe to the channel. All that good stuff. You guys know how to support. You can also subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com, ofbnews.com, the way to subscribe to that. I will continue rolling out the anonymous player survey that you've been hearing snippets of on the show here. So make sure that you are subscribed there. We are getting to, I'm about to hit 4,900 subscribers. I was like 4 off as of earlier today. So about to get to 4,900 subscribers to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Immensely appreciate all of you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, who said Harrow? Blink 182 is absolutely S tier. Blink 182 is S tier. You are totally right about that. Totally right about that. Hey, thank you, Harrow. Thank you. Come back Wednesdays and Sundays. We are here. Actually, I may have to miss Wednesday. If I do, you're going to get pre-recorded content this week because I've still got Kalani Sitake and Brian Santiago from BYU, and maybe working on something else this week too. So I will try to make it up to you guys. All right. With that, I'm going to sign off. Take care, guys. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for all your support, and enjoy your week. I will talk to you all very soon. Well, did I miss a super chat? I did miss a super chat. Eddie, my guy, Eddie. Hi, buddy. Just got to your show. Thanks for your support of the Big 12. Thank you for your support of this channel, Eddie. I'm sorry. That must have come in right at the beginning of the tier list. Eddie, thank you for your support as always, man. Thank you for being here. If you guys need a real estate agent in San Antonio, check out my guy, Eddie, at Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. Okay, everybody. Take care. Enjoy your night. Enjoy your week. And I will talk to you soon.